kidding me? We have not recovered from this recession. In fact, the Obamacare Express continues to destroy our national economy. You know, Obamacare has created significant job loss across this country. In 2010, in the state Senate, I introduced a bill called the Healthcare Freedom Act that would have nullified the provisions of Obamacare in South Dakota. It was at a time when Obamacare was just really getting its wheels under it, and so we would have joined other states in opposing that legislation that has been incredibly bad for our economy, particularly those people in South Dakota seeing their insurance premiums going up. Then Governor Mike Brown sent his chief of staff to the Senate State Affairs Committee to kill that bill. I've been a staunch opponent of government-run health care. And I think if we really think that government-run health care stimulates our economy rather than hurting it, we should visit the Indian Health Service, or just doesn't take long to review the recent news about the Veterans Administration. What a debacle that's been for veterans who are literally dying waiting to get care. So not only is it a bad health care system, but it impugns our ability to recover economically. And I was at a restaurant not long ago. A waitress was bemoaning the fact that she had to go find different work because her employer had reduced her hours, and she couldn't afford to live on the hours that she could get with that employer.
And Mr. Howie, thank you. Mr. Pressler, 60 seconds. Have we fully recovered from the recession?
Let me first of all say that I want to correct Rick on one thing. I did support campaign finance reform in Congress. I supported all of the John Anderson reforms, and I voted for campaign reform over and over in my time, in my 22 years in the House and Senate. Let me say that as far as wages are concerned, we need to raise the minimum wage in South Dakota. We need to raise teachers' pay. We need to help our Native Americans. Recently, I was honored to be to eulogize Gerald Onefeather, one of the most legendary Native American leaders in South Dakota. And Harriet and I were there on the reservation in Pine Ridge, and I will be on 2 more Native American reservations. But as we go around this state, and we're going to visit 15 cities starting tomorrow, I see a lot of poverty. I also see the middle class is struggling economically. We have a problem financially in our state. People just barely get by who are on wages, people who work for wages, whether they're working in a bank even, but if they work for wages, wages are low in South Dakota, and our people are struggling. I want to do something, and that's why I want to get into the United States Senate. I will be a powerful voice, an independent voice, and a voice that's able to speak for the people of South Dakota and not special interests.
Mr. Pressler, thank you. Mr. Weiland, 60 seconds. Have we fully recovered from the recession?
Well, I think if you're part of the 1% we have, 95% of the recovery has gone to the top 1% in this country. And that's why I think big money likes a dysfunctional federal government. Government has always been, prior to this big money influence, kind of it's supposed to be an honest referee, but they've bought off the referee. And they like government when it's dysfunctional and can't get anything done because they can maintain the status quo. When 400 people in this country have more wealth than 150 million people, something's wrong. Something's happened to our country. And I maintain it's because big government, our big money's got in the way of good government. And that's what we need to change. That's why I'm for this constitutional amendment. There are things that we need to do here in South Dakota. I've come out in favor of this ballot initiative for the minimum wage. We do have a struggling middle class here in South Dakota, and we need to address it, and we can. But it's not the Paul Ryan budget, which Mike Rounds wants to support, because what it does is continues the big money run of government by cutting billionaires' taxes and big corporations' taxes, and putting the fiscal responsibility on programs like cutting Head Start and student loans and grants, and that's just simply not the way to go.
And gentlemen, we are beginning to get a little tight on time now here as the hour goes on.
Do I get 60 seconds on that? Even 30 would do.
30.
Okay. I would just say I respectfully disagree with both of my friends here on this program about increasing the minimum wage. That doesn't solve the problem. We have to solve problems by going to the root. And the root problem isn't that raising the minimum wage can solve it. We need to stop printing or creating new money which devalues every dollar these middle class and low class income earners make in this country. We need to do something about fiscal responsibility, to stop overspending and to stop overtaxing.
All right, now gentlemen, going forward, but no worries, we are getting tight on time. Going forward, each question, each of you will get 60 seconds to answer. In late spring, the president said he would take executive action on immigration reform. He now says he will delay taking any action until after the November midterm elections. Now, one of the ways this affects us right here at home, the White House says 10% of all farm workers in South Dakota are not citizens of the United States. Gentlemen, here's the question. What specifically needs to be done to reform American immigration policy? Mr. Pressler, 60 seconds.
Yes, specifically, I would do three things. First of all, I would relocate some of our obsolete bases in Europe, and especially Italy, back to the United States and have them patrol the border, and that would give us a secure border between Mexico and the United States. And we could do that at no additional cost to the taxpayers because we already have the troops doing nothing. Number two, I would follow the George Bush immigration plan. I would advocate a 5-year path to citizenship for our people. And number three, I would recognize the particular needs of agriculture and other needs. We need to throw our arms around many of the Mexican immigrants who are here legally. We need them and we want them, and they're a blessing to our country because they help us pay our Social Security for us old guys. So we need a lot of the immigrants who have come, and they are a blessing to us. But we want to bring them in on an orderly basis with a secure border. And that is what I will fight for in the United States Senate. And let me say that I would join with Rick in the constitutional amendment on campaign reform. I didn't get a chance to say that.
Mr. Weiland, 60 seconds. How do we specifically reform immigration?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, in a very sort of uncharacteristic bipartisan effort, the United States Senate last year passed immigration reform with over 60 votes. And they sent it over to the House of Representatives for consideration and to take a vote on. But unfortunately, Speaker Boehner hasn't even brought it to the floor. If he did, it would pass. I think most people know that. That was a bipartisan bill that put aside some money for border security, which is, I think, what the Republicans wanted. And it also created a path to citizenship for the 12 million some undocumented workers in this country. So I think that's a pretty straightforward answer. Pass the bill that the Senate is already deliberated on and sent over to the House. Now, I want to say this. I don't think the EB-5 visa program is an immigration policy. People should come through to this country not buying their way into permanent residency status, but going through the immigration process. And Mike's not here to talk about that, unfortunately.
Mr. Howie, 60 seconds. Specifically, how do we reform immigration?
Well, a good start might be for a president to get off of his golf cart and get back into the Oval Office and do some business. We need to secure the border of this country. It's unthinkable to me that Mexico can keep their border secure. It's the same border. And if someone accidentally crosses into Mexico, they find themselves incarcerated. But our border, that same border, is open, and hundreds of thousands of people are coming through undocumented. What we need to do is secure the border. That's job number one. Then we need to track every single worker. This isn't a process of eliminating farm workers or other laborers. It's simply that we need to know where they are, who they are, and what they're doing. And absent that, our national security is in serious jeopardy.
Gentlemen, we have seen how the oil boom in North Dakota has jump-started that state's economy, with North Dakota realizing an estimated $30 billion in economic impact a year. It's believed there are strong and solid oil deposits in northwest South Dakota, but interest and action has been slight. Gentlemen, do you support oil exploration in northwest South Dakota? And what would you do to get exploration up and running? Mr. Weiland, 60 seconds.
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I spent some time over there on my town-to-town tour and had an opportunity to talk to a lot of farmers and ranchers in Harding County and in other areas of the northwestern corner of our state. And, you know, if it's an untapped resource, we need to explore it. Right now, I don't see a lot of effort going forward out there, and it may be because of the fact that the Bakken fields in North Dakota are richer in supply, and the process is already underway. I mean, eventually, I can see it coming to that part of our state, and we need to be prepared. Maybe there are some lessons learned from what's going on in North Dakota that we need to be mindful of if it comes to that part of our state. But, you know, I personally think that we should be moving more toward renewable sources of energy, like ethanol and solar and wind, and to move away from the fossil fuel development that we're doing. But we have to transition to that, and we need to make sure that we're making a concerted effort to do it.
Mr. Howie, 60 seconds on South Dakota oil.
Well, the Environmental Protection Agency is an agency that has gone far beyond the pale when it comes to regulating all sorts of businesses. The government has regulated energy production and development practically out of business. I don't know if we could find out at this moment when the last oil refinery was constructed in this country. We need a policy that would enable businessmen and women to invest in the development of our natural resources. I support oil and natural gas development in South Dakota, and frankly, the Bakken isn't just in North Dakota. There's the City of Faith, I think, hit oil drilling a water well. I know personally of a rancher who was drilling water 30 miles or so out of Rapid City and pumped oil for 5 days. It's here, ladies and gentlemen, but we see government restricting the development.
Mr. Howie, that's time. Mr. Pressler, 60 seconds on South Dakota oil.
Well, what I would do is I would use my seniority, which I can take back to the Senate, and get on one of the energy committees and work for legislation that would allow development of oil in South Dakota with extreme environmental care. Now, I co-sponsored 3 water pipelines in our state because we don't have very much potable water in South Dakota, believe it or not, water for human beings to drink. And those pipelines have been built. So in my 3 terms in the Senate, I've worked on this water problem, and I don't want to see any more of our groundwater being polluted. But there may be a way to do it, and I'm in favor of it if we can do it in an environmentally safe way. And people tell me a lot of stories about the EPA. I would go and see President Obama, and I'm the only candidate running who has a personal relationship with him that I could see him and work with him. And although I don't agree with President Obama on a lot of things, he is the President of the United States for 2 more years, and those EPA regulations are handled by the administration.
Mr. Pressler, thank you. Gentlemen, because of time, you each have 30 seconds to answer this final question. What does it mean to be a United States Senator? Mr. Pressler, 30 seconds.
Well, I believe it means to serve. I have devoted my life to public service. Dr. Farber, the legendary professor down at the University of South Dakota, used to tell us to do public service, and I want to help the people of South Dakota. The people of South Dakota need help. We're a small state, and we've been ranked one of the most corrupt states in the Union. We need a breath of fresh air, and my election would change the dynamics of South Dakota politics and national politics.
Mr. Weiland, 30 seconds. What does it mean to be a United States Senator?
Well, first of all, you got to show up. And when you show up, you've got to be on the side of everyday folks here in this state that really deserve a fair shake, and they're not getting it from their government. Governments basically, as I have maintained from the beginning of my campaign, been bought and paid for by big money. Get big money out of running our government and lining the pockets of politicians who are more interested in shaking them down than shaking hands with voters. That's what it means. You stand up, you fight every day in the United States Senate for everyday folks in the state. We're not a state of billionaires and big corporations. We're everyday people.
Mr. Howie, 30 seconds. What does it mean to be a United States Senator?
Well, I think it's a significant position that allows you to be a voice representing the people. And frankly, we need need a voice in Washington, D.C., in the United States Senate, who will demand that we return to the things that made our country great. Those principles, the foundation of faith, freedom, and purpose. And we don't hear a lot of talk about faith on the campaign trail, but we are, after all, a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and those principles provide an ethical basis to make good policy decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Howie. By a drawing of straws, we determined the order for closing statements, and Mr. Pressler, we are